Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. And I am so excited to be having this conversation. And I've got an exciting opportunity that we're putting together here at Career Evolved to help executives and high level leaders transition from those roles into being an entrepreneur. And I think it's really important to think through this decision before you go on this journey because it's such a big decision. And it needs to be the right time and you need to know why you're doing it. So that's why this conversation is being had today. We want to guide you through why now. And I've brought to the table Paul Kahn because he is the perfect person to have this conversation with and to help me guide you through this journey because Paul has seen it all at this point. He's a TEDx speaker, he's consulted and trained, coached. He's led some of the top brands in the country. He's started multiple businesses in different markets. He's done it while also holding down an executive role in corporate, while also going all in on it. So he can see it from every angle. And there's so much to think through because it's such a big shift to go from that executive identity to now running a company and where everything's on you. It's completely different identity and mindset. So, Paul, welcome. I'm excited to have you here to have this conversation.
Thanks for having me. I'm very, very excited about it. This is something I'm very, very passionate about. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it's an important one and well timed in terms of where we're moving towards. I think just with the landscape of business right now in the world, I think that there's huge opportunity here. So I'm excited.
I know, and we're seeing it every day at Career Evolve. So many markets are getting disrupted. So many industries are just getting spun up. So let's talk about why now. Why is now the right time to consider the entrepreneurship path?
For sure. I think, number one, for myself, I am not a call it typical entrepreneur. I think a lot of times when you listen to entrepreneurs, they're like, I was selling lemonade when I was a kid and I was like, doing newspaper routes. Like, I was never that person. I actually never even considered myself to be an entrepreneur. I was very much nurtured from the very beginning at a very young age around corporate. You want to move up the corporate ladder. You're going to have that stability, and then you're going to, that's where you want to be. You got the house and the white picket fence. So for me, I think like there's a lot of people out there that maybe can relate to that, where they never thought about being an entrepreneur, and corporate was always the end goal. I think there's been a lot of changes. I think in the past, call it several years. I think pandemic was definitely one of those really eye-opening moments for people that never ever thought that their jobs would ever be eliminated, that they would ever be furloughed, or that they'd ever be let go altogether. And I think it was very eye opening that corporate is not that safe haven anymore, where it's going to guarantee you in terms of that security all the way till you're 65 and you're retired and you're going to have a 401k. It's not like that anymore. There is companies that year after year are cutting costs. The industry is being disrupted constantly. AI is not just on the horizon, it's here. And there are many companies, most companies right now are adopting it in some way, shape, or form. And there's about to be a lot of disruption and job loss that's about to come. And we're not even on that yet. And so what I realized when I was going through that journey myself, when, my first round in corporate, I was really thinking of staying there forever. And then when there was a lot of disruption that was happening, there was a lot of restructure that I think a lot of people have been through now as well and can relate in your community, is what I realized is, man, there isn't any loyalty anymore to it. At the end of the day, it's just business. And if they need to
Right.
cut costs, if they need to, move things around, it's not personal. But unfortunately, it is personal to you because you got a family, you got a life, you have mortgages, you have bills to pay, and all of us are just trying to find the best way to take care of ourselves and our families. And I just when I made that jump over to corporate, it from corporate, it opened my eyes to a whole new world I didn't even realize was possible in terms of the time, the location, the financial freedom that is available. What that provided me, I couldn't have experienced being within, call it the four walls of corporate. And I just think even like coming back after that from running as an entrepreneur full time, never in my mind have I changed the thought process of you need multiple streams of income in order to protect yourself. It's a hedge at any moment. Anything could happen. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. And so I think there's a lot that's changing, just even with, what was it, 500,000 tech jobs that have been eliminated just this
Yeah.
year. There's a lot of people that are really struggling out there that are gifted, that are smart, and are real. It's not that their skill set isn't wanted. There is just they have to be dependent on companies that are right now oversaturated with candidates that want the same job, and they're shrinking down on their budgets, and the economy is going in the same direction. How do you best protect yourself? It's to create your own economy. So that's why I think this is the perfect time. If you've had that nudge, and it's not for everyone, I know we're going to talk about that. If you've had that nudge, that inkling of like, man, it would be great. Like maybe one day I want to create a business on my own, or I want to, take my skill set that I've built here and be able to help people in a different way, and be able to build something out of that. I think if you've had that inkling, or if you had that gut feel, or you've thought of that, I think this is a really great time to really consider building that now, and then building the path to be able to eventually, even if it isn't full time, give you a choice of whether or not you want to pursue that path of full-time entrepreneur, or continue to do both. They're definitely possibilities, but the most beautiful thing is you have choice.
I love this. There's a lot to unpack with what you said. And I think that I want to talk about values because we're at Career Evolved and we're big on alignment, right? And I know as you evolve and as you have kids, as your life evolves,
Mm-hmm.
so does what your priorities are. And I know for me, it used to be highly income driven.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's more about freedom, and freedom is my top value. And so
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning of life, when you're building your nest egg, you're building your security, and you've got to secure your cash flow and your retirement. I know as I'm seeing people move on with their career, I'm seeing the later stage folks that have already reached the peak of their income. They're
Mm-hmm.
already at the C suite. It's like they know they can't really make more money there as well. They hit a ceiling. And I'm also seeing people actually make more money working a lot less through consulting. I just recently saw one of our clients, um, Alex. She was able to get one client paying her 15,000 a month
Mm-hmm.
and for 20 hours of work per week.
Mm-hmm.
So she's actually making more than her full-time job at Nike. And I was like blown away because,
Mm-hmm.
and so as I thought about that, I was like, wow, this is what I'm seeing now is about 20% of these executives are actually securing these contracts. And not only are they earning more money, but they have more time back, which is bizarre because it's almost like it's an easier opportunity to secure that we're seeing at least right now. And I think it's just the nature of the way that that investment sits on the P&L for the business. It's an easier thing for them to make happen. So I'd love to hear your take on that. Like, some people think, oh my gosh, am I going to have to take a big pay cut? What, and I think we got to talk about that when it comes to values. I would say if you absolutely need safety, I don't know how I would advise somebody on that. I'd have to ask some more questions, right? But
Yeah,
if freedom's your number one value, well, this is the path, right?
for sure. And so a couple different things with that. I think one is you don't know what you don't know. I think in corporate, we've been trained from a very, very, young age, very, very early on of like how it looks. And this is just how it is. So you see the leaders above you that have to put in the hours, not just 40 hours, right? Obviously, no one works 40 hours when you're at that level. You're working 50, 60, 70 hours. You're traveling all the time. You're not home. And you have to make all these sacrifices. And they talk about like work life, not even balance, but like integration. But at the same time, like let's not forget in terms of that there is a lot of times where they have to be flying all over the place. They have to be in all these meetings. It's just part of the role. And I think when you're in corporate, there is this acceptance of this is just how it is. This is how it is. These are the sacrifices I need to make. And yes, my kids I may not be able to be there as much as I like with my kids. And, I'll still make this and that and prioritize that. I think most companies have been getting better around providing that flexibility. But guess what? At the end of the day, the job needs to still get done, and you still got to do what you got to do. And there's certain things that you just cannot move around, unfortunately. I don't think that I realized myself that there was a different way until I jumped to the other side and I saw entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants making $200,000 a client working 4 hours a week. I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, how is that even possible? Like, I was my jaw was on the floor. Like I was completely shell shocked because I was like, how is this possible? Because we're taught that time is money, right? Like you trade your time for money. So obviously I got to work harder. Yes, I can work smarter and I have productivity and all that kind of stuff, but then I got to work up the corporate ladder and I got to put in all the time and I got to be able to, like have all those developmental milestones and I got to have these different kind of developmental experiences so that I eventually, with that 10% raise, that 2-3% raise every single year, like eventually make that jump to like VP or C-suite and things like that. And then once you get there, like that's it. Like that's what you're aiming for. You're there, you've reached the peak, but then you don't realize there's a whole other possibility out there, which doesn't require you to trade 50, 60, 70 hours of your work week for money. That the knowledge is in the sorry, the value is in the knowledge that you have that there is someone out there. If you're able to package it in the right way, if you're able to speak to the right person in the right way to convey your value, there are people that are willing to pay you for your knowledge in order to solve their problems. And the value is in whatever you decide to price it at. And that's the bizarre part, right? We're like, wait a second, it doesn't come with a chart of like this equals this pay grade. No, the beautiful thing is that you get to decide what you're worth. And the most powerful thing I learned was this phrase, that really stuck with me. And most people are waiting for jobs to pay them what they're worth. Your job it's not their responsibility to pay you what you're worth. They pay you what the job is worth. It is your job to find the difference between your worth and what you're being paid. And the only way to do that is to bridge the gap through entrepreneurship, is to go build your own economy, is to take and value all this gold mine that you've accumulated over the years, that there are companies, there are individuals out there that are willing to pay you big money in order to learn from you, in order to not make the same mistakes, for you to guide them so that they can exponentially grow. And all you got to do is be able to, number one, understand the worth of that knowledge. Number two, be able to package that in the right way. And number three, like really have the courage to like put yourself out there and take a risk. Like it is a risk. And at the same time, like if you're willing, if you feel like it is a calling, it is a fit for you, there is exponential, a mind-blowing amount of, not just opportunity, but a whole other kind of life that you didn't realize you could have outside of this.
I love this. And, you remind me of this quote. It's like, I'm not going to charge you for how long it took me. I'm going to charge you
Mm,
for the decade it took me for this to take 15 minutes,
yes.
right? And I think that's a totally different mindset of the entrepreneur that knows their value and can command their value, because
Mm,
that's a shift. Because I talk to so many executives that are seeing, I think I can get 300 an hour for my time, and they're still stuck in that hourly sell
mm,
my time mindset. And I think it's a totally different identity and skill set and mindset to be able to truly command the value of the outcome, not the time it took. And
mm,
so let's talk about that, because obviously people go into entrepreneurship for freedom and limitless income potential. So
mm, mm.
everyone's at a crossroads because everybody likes the idea of that hockey stick opportunity, right? But how do you know? And we both have been on the other side of the desk where you're like, do I build it on the side? Do I go all in? Like,
Yeah.
how do I make that decision? When's the right time?
So it's funny because I've done it both ways. I have quit cold turkey, jumped into it, built a business during COVID. It was insanity. I would not recommend that, first of all. So like, it comes with some of the call it the war stories of the mistakes that we've made, right? Those that have done it before. I think there is a way to do it where you can make a very smart, intentional decision about how you're going to best set up you and your family for success. Especially if you have a family, it's important. I get it. Like, you have bills to pay, you have responsibilities. It's not about, when you listen to social media, that's why it's the wrong place to go for this kinds of advice, because they're like, hey, you just go for it anyway. You got to take the jump, burn the boats, and you just got to go all in. Like, no, there's a real practicality to how you can do this in a way so that when you are fully an entrepreneur, you're not running off of desperation. And I see that a lot. And I've been there before, because what happens is that when you don't plan it in a way where, and of course, like, there's going to be unexpected things that come up in life, right? We can't hedge everything, but you can do your best to really try to calculate the risk, as well as make the best plan to set you up for success. Because if you don't, what happens is that you end up in a place where, say, if you're just one day like, I'm sick of this, I'm just going to jump, right? Or, yeah, I'm just going to take a leap of faith. And, there wasn't any kind of plan leading up to it. The problem is that you end up in a place of desperation. Every sales call you go on, you need to land that sales call, because your paycheck and your family's depending on it. And that is a very, very dangerous place to be. And I have been there before. It is not fun. It is stressful. It is anxiety inducing. And guess what? People can smell desperation from a mile away. And so it's just not flowing. And it's going to be very, very hard. And then you go back to, man, I made a mistake. Well, here's the thing. If you actually back it up, if you know your end goal is, hey, this is what I want to aim for, this is what I want to do, but I want to do it in a way where when I get there, it's going to feel seamless. Well, guess what? You have an opportunity right now of being in a really great place, which is you have this corporate position right now. It's paying you a paycheck, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it is. And the thing is the mindset shift of, okay, instead of I'm in this job now, this role to keep moving up the corporate ladder, this role is now paying you and giving you time, buying you time to be able to build that roadmap for you to be able to make the jump eventually. And so right now, you got to think about, okay, well, how much do I need, stashed away in order for me to be able to get by, like, say, 6 months, a year, right? How much do I need to make in order to replace my income, right? How can I start prioritizing my time differently, so that instead of, before you'd spend whatever 50, 60 hours or 70 hours in your executive job, well, now you're paring it down. You're still getting things done, you're still showing up, but you are prioritizing your time a little bit. Maybe you're working more efficiently to be like, hey, I'm going to dedicate 2, 3 hours, a week, to be able to start building this slowly, 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 and then know that the money, I'm going to start putting it away. Maybe I'm not, you know spending on whatever that vacation, knowing that, like, this is what I'm building towards. So when you start working the numbers backwards of, like, okay, how much do I need to put away for 6 months to a year, right? How much do I need to start making to have replaced my income so that I can comfortably, or like close enough for me to like comfortably feel like I can take the leap of faith? I think when you have that piece in place and you start putting that in place, when you do make the jump finally, number one, you have a choice. It's like, do you still want to jump and do this full time, or maybe you want to do both, right? You can build whatever you like. That's the beautiful thing. But when you do jump, if you decide to, you're doing it with a net, so that it's not like so terrifying and scary. And I think a lot of people are scared of that. They're like, I'm scared of like not having that paycheck weekly. Well, if you do it right, if you plan it right now, you start shifting around your lifestyle, knowing that you have a bigger goal in mind that you're aiming towards, then when you get there, it's not so scary, because you also, along the way, have started building your business as you have this safety net of a corporate job, so that you're not in desperation. You start building your client base, you start building that foundation of your business, so that when you do make the jump, you have clients in your pipeline already. Maybe you definitely have some paying clients already, and you have a plan in place for you to now take that time you now have in your hands, and you know what to do with it, which is probably the most terrifying part when you leave corporate, is like, now I have all this time, where do I go? And it's very easy to get lost in that ocean if you don't have direction.
I agree. And I just want to reiterate what you said, because I think you can't build without a foundation of
Yes.
safety. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have different needs to feel safe and
Yes.
different levels of risk tolerance. So I think that's such an individual assessment and
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But I remember for me, I built on the side because I truly know myself. I just like a lot of people listening, I had a six-figure salary and great benefits, great bonus, right?
Mm-hmm.
and I was used to a certain level of lifestyle, going to
Yes.
these amazing happy hours. And, yeah, yes, you must make sacrifices in business. But for me, I didn't really want to live the top ramen lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it that bad. So I chose to build on the side. And my commitment to myself was once I reach half of my monthly income,
Mm-hmm.
I feel confident that I can channel all my time and easily make that up. So that was what I needed personally to feel safe to take that leap. But I know for everybody, it's a little bit different because some people don't value the nice happy hours and going to nice places. I didn't want to like live like a monk for a year. That just wasn't for me. I wanted to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because I think a lot of times when you, once again, listen on social media, there's the whole like, yeah, do whatever it takes, cut back, scale back, live, bare minimum in order to like reach the goal of your dreams,
Mhm.
3, 4, 5 years down the road. I'm very much in the same boat as you. That didn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to live like that. In the time being, like that doesn't feel aligned for me. Some people, that's fine. They got the lawn chair and they got that fold out table and they're good. And they'll eat like you said, like that's fine for them. That did not work for me, right? To your point, I love food too. I loved the vacations, even if it's not to Italy or whatever. I like being able to like travel with my wife and things like that. And so I think it's very individual to your point of like what is your risk tolerance and what is your tolerance for what kind of lifestyle your shift you're willing to
Yes.
make. And if you're not willing to make that shift, great. Don't force yourself into a box that you don't feel at home in.
Mhm.
Then make the right plans to be able to accommodate that so that it might take you a little bit longer because to your point you're like maybe I have to build up more of a safety net financially for me to get to that point, and that's fine. But guess what, when you get there you're not going to be in that fight or flight mode because now you're like, okay, I've built it up to where I feel comfortable, where my family feels safely taken care of, and now I can really go all in. And that's how I operate. For some people it's like, yeah, the house could be burning down, they're like, great, I'm gonna make it, and that's fine. But not everyone operates like that. So I do encourage you to really look at, to your point, like what is your risk tolerance and what does that look like, what's that journey get to look like for you?
And I'm glad you brought that up because you and I have a similar mindset with
Yeah.
this, where I truly believe this is actually a unique mindset, but I think it's what's allowed me to be fulfilled and successful and scale businesses. So
Mm.
it comes down to I design my business to serve me.
Yes.
Because when I didn't do that, and the first time around I did not, and I was burnout, I was stressed, I was
Mm-hmm.
resentful of the business,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a grind and it was heavy and I wasn't having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Now I realize the business must serve me because I'm the linchpin of the business and it has to be designed around me and my values, or
Mm-hmm.
it's not sustainable.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's something I think we really look at this holistically because I think that's the key. Because most people don't make it because it's not aligned, right?
Yes.
And they don't think about it like this out the gate.
Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of people buy into the the Instagram. I just keep going back to social media because it's really the Instagram highlights real version of what entrepreneurship is. I'm not saying that it's easy. It's not. But
Yeah.
what is different about it is why you're doing it and how you're doing it, right? And
Yeah.
because the beautiful thing is it's a choice. It gets to be a choice. And to your point, you can turn one job into another job. And it's and the most profound thing that I realize is that if you don't change your perspective of how you're going about it and the vision you have for what you're creating, you're really just trading one jail cell for another. It's just a different view. So to your point, it's going to be a grind. It's going to be difficult and you're going to hate it. And I was there too, where my wife was like, I don't see you happy. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm miserable every single day, even though I've all the time freedom in the world and I'm doing what I love. But why am I not happy right now? It's because of how I created it. The grind, needing to feel like I'm doing it the way I did corporate. And the beautiful thing is that it doesn't have to be that way. And I think you really got to ask yourself, what does it get to look like? What does my family life get to look like? What's my personal life get to look like? How do I get to feel in this business? And what could it be like if I'm making more money and I have more time freedom and I also am able to focus on the things that I love to do and making the impact I want to make without all the other, kind of things that come with an executive job that you gotta deal with as well, the administrative, the people, whatever it is, that maybe isn't the part you love. But what does that get to look like for you? And then build towards that. Because then when you have a vision, it's kind of like you get to enter your destination in the GPS versus like you're just mindless, you're blindly heading towards it. But when you get there, is that really what you were aiming for? Or does it look different even though, the road there or just, it looks different. The mechanism is different.
It's so huge. Lifestyle design is key, and starting with that vision, which I know we're big on. So I do want to talk about the beginning and like thinking about, I know for me, the reason why I've rapidly got success and scale, I've built and scaled two multi seven figure per
Mm-hmm.
year companies now is because I didn't do it alone, and I was very selective with who I chose to receive guidance from. I invested out the gate in people that not only were successful, but looked genuinely energized and happy. I think that was important to me because
Mm.
it's, there's a lot of people that I know that are on back to back Zooms. And don't get me wrong, I have days where I'm like that, but I can't do that for more than like a few days on a row. Then I've got to recover. I've got to get back into balance or I burn out. So for you, like if you think back to like some of the investments and mentors you made, did you do that right out the gate or did you try to do it alone? What did that look like for you?
So it's interesting. I invested in my personal development. I actually didn't invest in a business coach to start, but I invested in personal development for myself because I realized that actually mindset was the most important component of it. And I know that that's really important for you as well because that is the engine behind
Yeah.
everything that you're doing. How you identify yourself, whether or not you believe the confidence that you have in yourself, that is 95% of the fight. Really, the other parts are just this mechanism of like how, a lot of people focus on, well, how do I do marketing? How do I do sales? No, no, no. That part's the easy part. It's actually all the self-belief and the identity work behind that. And so I invested in that part from the get-go. And the most powerful thing was that when I invested in that, I had never run a consulting business in my life. I had never had a coaching client in my life. And within 3 months, I landed a $10,000 client. And people
Wow.
told me, like, you can't do that. Like, you got to start doing it for free. You got to maybe charge like $100, $200. And I was like, no, it really came down to that self belief. And that's because I had coaches alongside of me that supported me and the community behind me that was like, no, Paul, you can do this. I was like, what do you mean I charge $10,000? Like, it was unheard of for me at that time of like, how could this be possible? Yet by the end of it, I had a check in hand for $10,000 and a client, and I had never in my life even had a coaching business. So it's like that is so important because when you believe and when you value yourself, you can create anything. And I think at the very beginning, the second piece that I wish I knew how or I had the support behind, aside from the personal development, was someone to guide me in terms of figuring out what in the world I'm doing. Because I spent years, like years, and yes, it was during the pandemic. There was a lot of changing things, but I spent years wandering around every single day, struggling to sell my services because at the end of the day, I had so many skill sets. I had so many things I could help people with. And I was all over the place in terms of like, what is the one thing that I am selling to people? What am I offering? Like, what is it exactly that I do? Like when people come up to me, it was so convoluted because it was so unclear from the beginning that I wasted so much time trying to figure out my identity, trying to figure out the identity of my company, trying to figure out who I'm serving and what exactly am I serving them with. That part was I wish I had at the beginning because instead of focusing 5 months making a website, I would have dove down into that and gotten clarity on that. And I would have been off to the races afterwards instead of reinventing my business every 3 months because someone else asked me, can you do this? And I'd be shifting it every time. And then when it wasn't working, I'd shift again. That is the number one thing that I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is once they go in, they try to serve everyone, they try to do everything, and they end
Yeah.
up serving nobody and doing nothing and selling nothing. And so that
Yep.
part, I wish I had someone to guide me.
I'm so glad you brought this up, and because I'm the same way. Tactics and strategy, people overcomplicate business.
Yes.
We'll have that another conversation about that on the next episode. We're going to be doing 3 parts of this on just the transition from executive to entrepreneur. But the one thing that you said that so many people don't realize, it's 80% mindset to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still remember when I started, I think my price point was like $3,000.
Mm.
And every time I would stair step that price, I promise you, and I am a highly educated, intelligent woman who knows logically my value. But every time I'd raise that price, I would kind of have a panic attack internally. And the thought would be, are they still going to buy? Are they still going to buy? And
Mm-hmm.
like, if you haven't got that conviction to be able to command that value,
Mm.
it's one thing to logically know the value. It's another thing to become the person that can command it. It's a level of conviction that I don't think
Yes.
people understand until you're in front of somebody and really having that conversation. And so the level of conviction required goes up with the
Mm.
price point. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got to know that you really can deliver, and they're having someone to help you unpack all of the junk and the fear and the self-limiting beliefs. I think that is the thing that people don't prepare for. I believe
Yes.
entrepreneurship is an acceleration of your personal growth because there's nowhere to hide.
Yes. Yeah. And I would just want to add to that. I think you hit it right on the head because even if you are a sales professional, like you are a sales executive, that's what you've done your entire life, you're incredibly good at a corporate level. This is a whole other level of sales. Let me tell you why. You're selling yourself, which is so different than if I'm selling you this mouse or if I'm selling you whatever product. Give me any product, I can sell that to the moon. But when you're selling yourself, it's personal. You
It
are
is.
putting your worth on the table. And that is tough stuff. And that is a level of, like you said, not just confidence, but self-worth that we don't really get to touch usually because most of the time we put our self-worth on delivering, productivity and results and all that kind of stuff in the corporate world. But we've never had to sell ourselves as the product. And when people say no to you, it's a whole other level of personal because they're not just saying no to your product and it's like, cool, move on. They're saying no to you. And that hits the system differently every time where you're like, woof, like they said no to me. Like, where am I not? Like, there is a whole loop, that you end up in, which can be dangerous if you haven't done that work. It can crumple you real fast. And I struggle with that because I didn't realize how personal it would get when you were selling yourself at the table versus selling a product. You are the product. So there's nowhere to hide, like you said. So when you haven't prepared for that ahead of time, you are in for a shell shock of an experience because all of a sudden you become scared to get on calls. You become resistant in your own way. You start self sabotaging because the courage it takes and the level of work you got to do on yourself to reinvent and be able to view and value yourself differently is a really deep process, and it requires a lot to be able to come to the table and be like, you know what, I stand by that. I am worth this and I'm not wavering. And I'm willing to find the right person that is going to see that value. That takes a whole other level of leadership to really be able to get there. So I would say having that support at the very beginning to prepare you for that is going to be crucial.
Absolutely. Well, as we're wrapping up here, I want to share a really rare and exciting opportunity. So, we are launching the opportunity to take a group of executives who are transitioning into entrepreneurship, where we're going to help you get clarity on your market, your target audience, your go to market strategy. And we want to make sure for this first cohort that we have the right group of people that are really aligned and really committed to this process, because we want everyone to leave ready to hit the ground running and knock it out of the park and start driving revenue when they leave this process. So I'd love to speak with you. I never do this, but I'm opening up my calendar for anyone who's interested. I can offer you a free 1 hour consultation call. And really, my goal is to assess what's your background? What are your skills? What are your goals? And, is this a viable plan and path for you? And is this program and our guidance going to serve you to get there faster? And so, either way, you'll leave with a ton of value. Like I said, I've built and scaled two multi seven figure companies. I love talking to aspiring entrepreneurs and high achieving leaders. So I'm very excited to connect with you. If this resonated and you listen this far, all you've got to do is go to careerevolve.com/business. So www.careerevolve.com/business, and go ahead, fill out that form. You'll be able to select a time to book with me for a 1 hour Zoom, and we'll get to the truth on if this is the time for you to transition and if we can help you get there faster. But go ahead, book that call, and I'm looking forward to talking to you. And Paul, thank you so much for all your knowledge. And we've got two more conversations coming to you because we've only scraped the surface of that first year in transition. So we're going to be dropping more value to you guys again with the coming two episodes.
Thanks, Olivia. Looking forward to it.